Hello, in this video, we will discuss a topic that many people often forget when it comes to online marketing, specifically social proof and Instagram followers, which are becoming more and more important from the customer's perspective. I also see that a lot of mistakes are made here. For example, most companies don't have time for slow and organic growth. That's why I'm going to show you a better solution here. Don't worry. Of course, I don't mean that we're just going to buy bots, but rather that we're going to generate real people through Instagram ads who will follow your account and could also be potential customers. It's about credibility, a key factor today, even if it seems trivial. If the customer already has a bad feeling and hesitates to make a purchase, it is already negative for the business, as he will then buy less. A customer journey is the path to purchase or registration, for example, all the contact points up to that point. In this journey, many customers often also look at reviews, which can also be comments from followers in posts. Many people will Google you and see your Insta account high up in the search results and then of course click on it. And here we can do the following. We can click on create in the top left, and then in this case, we select a traffic campaign as shown on the screen. Normally, I always recommend that you do a conversion campaign, for example, sales. The reason for that is that you should use a conversion campaign in the ad settings because you can just say to Facebook, hey, please only give me buyers like I selected as the target in my conversion campaign. That way, Facebook knows exactly what you want and optimizes itself in the long term so that you achieve exactly these. But in this case, we choose a traffic campaign because we want only to reach cost-effective people who are just following. And that's the reason why we do it in this case, because I always say that in exceptional cases, traffic makes sense, like our case here, where we want to generate high-quality followers cheaply and effectively, for example, for our company. And then we click on Next in the menu. We select Manual Traffic Campaign here so that we can control this better ourselves. Up here, of course, I would always assign a name directly, because this Instagram campaign is usually an additional campaign between the other campaigns. For example, it doesn't get much budget either. It's simply meant to generate followers with a small budget and support the other campaigns. Even if the budget is small, the effect is extremely high. In the long term, you can make much more sales with almost the same advertising budget. For instance, when we label it, we can say Instagram followers. So we can scroll down here. How everything is set up here exactly would go beyond the scope of this video, but I think most people should know more or less how it works here, how to set up a campaign properly. In that case, we will put the most important things for the Instagram follower campaign here. In that case, I would even put it on leave an ABO. So this is now, for example, an ABO, and if I activate it as shown here, it is a CBO that only decides whether the budget is distributed at campaign level or at ad group level. The budget is extremely low. We would like to control this at the ad group level because in a conversion campaign where you sometimes have several hundred or even thousands of dollars in daily budget, it is more advisable to work with the CBO, and that is exactly why we leave it here on ABO and then we click on next, as you can see here, and then we land on the ad group level, which we see now, and here we select, we then do the following, that we say, hey, we want to reach Instagram profiles. So we said on Facebook, we want you to reach this goal, and Facebook will now try to do that, or rather Facebook and Instagram, that we will try to effectively generate Instagram followers. And when we scroll down, you can leave the budget at standard at 20. You can also start with $5, start with $10. This is not like with sales where you say, hey, I have to start at least with $100 to $200 or $50 to $100. Here it is a little more relaxed. That is, here I recommend that you start again with a small budget and then simply test and increase it step by step. If, for example, things get better, you increase the budget, then you can, for example, you can set the date here to tomorrow, as seen on the screen, so that it starts on time tomorrow. Because if I set a campaign for today, for example, I always set it like this, that it then starts at midnight, for example, which is what I always do. And exactly then we go down here, and here we can then do the following, that we select the country. You can also, for example, limit the location. If you have a local business, for example, then followers are not much use now. If, for example, you are selling from Berlin but are generating followers from Cologne, which are cities far away, you can also say, hey, I would now like to restrict this to Cologne. For example, can you increase the radius here too? Of course, that is also possible, like this. And exactly, in this case, for example, we sell a marketing software. And we have it so that we can, for example, specifically address Germany. We can also specifically address the USA, or as is the case with you, we can also specifically address the whole of Europe. In this case, I'll just take United States, and exactly we'll scroll down here. And then we have the interests here. For example, you can use the Advantage Plus audiences, which is also relatively new. and also rather recommendable, because with it, Facebook has a little more leeway, but not too much leeway, so that we can also control a little and not give up control completely. And then I click on what we are doing now. And here you can then set the following. That means up here we have a custom audience. A custom audience is, for example, when a person has already interacted with our site, for example, has put something in the shopping cart, then we can reach this person with a custom audience. And then there is also, for example, a lookalike audience. A lookalike audience is simply based on a custom audience. So Facebook can say, hey, Facebook, for example, here you have 100 people, and please find me new people who are similar to these 100 people. This is only worthwhile if you have a lot of data, which is not the case for some people. But what I usually recommend is that you simply work with the lower area, for example, on an interest basis. For example, in our case, since we sell our marketing software, Adverfly, we can also say, hey, I enter marketing as shown here. Then you can look here to see what would be most similar to us. For example, digital marketing, I select this here. And then we narrow down an interest, for example. What you can do up here is to play with the age. If you know, for example, that the product is only for older people or younger people, then you can of course restrict the age, but we will leave it like this for now. Then you can also set the gender, for example, men or women, if the product is only for one target group, which we will leave as it is here for now. Here's another tip. I would recommend, for example, that you set the following up here. If you say, okay, my target group is 30 years old, maximum 30 years old, then I always want to add a little bit of buffer. You can say to Facebook, for example, hey, please do this up to 40. If you are unsure, I would leave it on all and standard, because Facebook's algorithm also optimizes itself automatically. Then I would recommend one more thing here, and that is, it is simply about the following point, that you can also say, for example, hey, I am doing broad targeting. That is, I am letting Facebook all the control. For example, I can just say, hey, I'm deleting it here. Then you can leave everything here as standard, so that Facebook then automatically does everything itself and then optimizes itself. The advantage here is simply that, let's say you cannot fully exploit the target group. For example, if you take a target group that is too small, then the problem here is that you often have to look for a new target group if the current target group is exhausted and gets worse results, because the target group is simply too small. In this case, we leave it on broad, as you can see here, and then I would label it as simply a broad campaign, so that everything is nicely structured. And exactly, then we scroll further down here in the campaign, and then we see the point with the rankings. Here I would recommend the following, namely that you leave it on Advantage Plus placements, because normally I would only do this for retargeting campaigns when I create ads. And for new customer campaigns, for example, I would always do a manual campaign, because the problem with these Advantage Plus placements is that this audience network, etc., is also present. This is just not very effective for new customer campaigns, because these are often games, for example, where you simply get rewards if you watch the video. The most effective placement places are feeds and stories. This obviously varies a little from target group to target group, but this simply makes it easier to control. But here you can also say that you leave Advantage Plus placements on, because as we have just seen here, everything is already deactivated here, because it's an Instagram profile campaign to generate followers, and that's why it's deactivated here. And that's why you can use it here as an exception, as a setting. I would still recommend that you say, for example, that you use manual placements, because then I would, for example, also say that you simply exclude Facebook, so we just filled the whole of Instagram. And if you want to make it even more special, you can, for example, also say that you only use the feeds now and exclude, for example, Reels. That would of course be a possibility, but in that case I would not limit it so much, but leave it on Instagram and look later, okay, what are the best placements now, and optimize accordingly. And exactly, then I click on next. And then we are at the advertising level. And here at the advertising level, you first have to select the Facebook page and the Instagram page, which is already the case here. And here below, we can select the variant. For example, you can create a new advertisement, as you are used to generate customers or registrations directly, or you can also say that you want to use an existing post. I personally recommend that you use an existing post when generating followers, so that, for example, the likes and comments are also collected on the page, because I would always recommend, as an additional tip, that if you already generate Instagram followers, that the page is not empty now, for example, that you have posted at least 9 to 12 posts, that this page looks filled at first glance and is not empty now, because the first impression is better that way. And if you then do that, then you can simply place advertisements on these posts and generate followers. And if you, for example, see that a post is performing extremely well anyway, you can push it with this, for example. Exactly. And I would never work with the highlight button in the app, because firstly, it is, let's say the structure is missing. If the sales campaigns are now running here in the business manager and the other campaigns on Instagram, it is a bit confusing. And the second thing is simply that we have a lot more control and should therefore do everything in the business manager for more precise settings. And if you have selected now existing post or created a new ad, depending on what you have selected, what you can also do is you can be very, very creative here. You can also make giveaways with cool gifts, for example, write a nice text, add a legal section, because that way you can generate very, very good followers. And then there are simply a lot of options for you to choose from as a marketer. You can experiment here a lot. So as discussed, don't ignore giveaways and give them a try, depending on whether it is suitable for you. You can experiment a lot here to see which works very well. Then we can deactivate this multi-advertiser ads here. We'll just remove the hook and here you can upload an image or a video depending on what you want to use. Invest in good creatives. They are also important for good results. I see again and again in discussions that people set up the ads very well, for example, but the creatives are only adequate, or the creatives are good, but the campaign settings are poorly configured, so please make an effort with both. It is definitely worth the effort. Here is a little information. If you are placing ads on different channels like Meta and Google, then I recommend our tool Adverfly, because the problem is probably well known to you, that all the advertising platforms often display incorrect numbers or measure sales poorly, and Adverfly solves the problem with its own pixel. This way you can measure your sales or leads really accurately and optimize the right campaigns. In addition, there is also the advantage that you can easily combine the advertising channels with the organic channels, that you can, for example, exclude and include channels, which is also possible here, that you can, for example, see the LTVs here, the lifetime value from a customer. As well, you see if a customer first sees a Meta ad and then buys through Google in the Adverfly customer journey. You can also see whether the person has bought something again after 90 days, for example, and optimize according to your higher LTV. You can also segment by new or returning customers and look more closely. In this way, you can create the right ads for returning customers and other ads for new customers, since you naturally have to address both very differently. If you want to find out more and test it for free, you can simply go to adverfly.com and test it there directly. So let's continue with the video so that you will soon have your Instagram followers. If you scroll down here, these are things automatically generated by Facebook that aren't pretty. I recommend that you just take your time and write something nice there. It doesn't take long, it's just a few texts. And exactly here we are finished. What you can now do is, for example, duplicate the created ads for the Instagram followers here to promote several posts, for example. And what you can also do is, if you have 3 posts in here, you can click on duplicate like I'm doing here, then I can switch between these posts. If you have posted 9 to 12 posts, then you can take 3 or 4 posts here and place advertisements on them and see everything clearly here. And the second thing that you can do here is you can also test up here whether, for example, broad ads work better, or if I duplicate it here to see what works better with other settings. You can also test it right here below. Hey, does an interest campaign work better? Then I have to, for example, simply select an interest below, as we will briefly do here. Then I enter marketing here, which I quickly type in. And exactly you can see whether this works better or that works better. You can, for example, test a lookalike later. And yes, that's it for the video. If you want to see more videos like this, feel free to subscribe to this channel and leave a like. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments so that I can help. Then I would say, see you in the next video.